So, the Gollum game came out, and it's just as boring and mediocre as you'd expect. I'm not sure why anyone would make a game starring Gollum since he doesn't do anything game-worthy in the Lord of the Rings story. What are you gonna have him do? Skulk around hiding from orcs and then go a sneaking to find the Shire? Yes, that's exactly what Daedalic Entertainment did. They made a game about a character doing nothing, and apparently not a very good one. The enemy AI is brick dumb, the environments look great from a distance but bland up close, and there's basically nothing to do in the game. A lot of time and money went into this for a very lackluster result. Now, you'd think it'd be obvious that this was a bad idea for a game because Gollum really doesn't do anything. He's not an action character. He's a tragic character, and while that makes for great storytelling, it's not gaming material. That's not to say you couldn't make this work. You would have to add in things that weren't in the books, things not even implied in the books, to fill this out and make it interesting, but it could be done. Unfortunately, Daedalic didn't do that, and many people have complained about paying $60 for a boring game. So, Daedalic issued an apology. They're one of many developers and publishers in recent weeks who've apologized for putting out disjointed, broken, unplayable games. On the plus side, Gollum isn't plagued by the level of performance issues as games like Redfall, The Last of Us, and Jedi Survivor, but it's still ridiculous that anyone would put out a game in this state and then act like they didn't know how the game played. These games take years to develop. Gollum was announced back in 2019 and was supposed to come out in 2021, but the release kept getting pushed back through all of 2022 until it finally came out in May of 2023. Daedalic had 4 years to realize that the game mechanics and enemy AI had issues, and that the gameplay was basically non-existent. Couple that with the basic truth that nobody was begging for a Gollum game, and you've got to ask, what were they thinking? There's been this trend with devs and publishers putting out lackluster and often unfinished games that need half a dozen patches just to get into a working playable state, and then we get these apologies, like that makes up for people dropping $50 to $70 on something that was nowhere near what was promised. Now, a reasonable person would go, you're right. We should playtest our games before release, and only release finished games so that you can actually play them. However, somebody's always got to be unreasonable and attack the people who just gave him their money. This dev on Twitter, who I'll call Snarky Schmuckman, that's with 2 N's, decided to take gamers to task for complaining about how the gaming industry treats their customers. Snarky says, quote, "Perhaps an unpopular opinion, and no shade meant to the team at all, but I really wish as an industry we would stop apologizing profusely for mediocre launches and slipped dates. We need to stop perpetuating this notion that game companies are servants of gamers." Who said game devs and publishers were servants of gamers? This has nothing to do with being servants. This is about game developers and publishers overpromising for their games, then putting out incomplete, glitchy messes, and then spending months fixing the problems they already knew were there. I think that if you're going to take someone's money, you better give them what they paid for, not just what you feel like doing at the time. The Gollum game is more boring than broken, but the devs knew the gameplay was mediocre. Why release the game with a $60 price tag when you know people aren't going to like it? Your job is to entertain. If you know people won't be entertained, why would you release the game and then act shocked that people don't like it? But Snarky tries to defend this, quote, "If I spend $50 on dinner and it's mediocre, I don't expect a handwritten profuse apology from the chef, especially if I have the option of just asking for my money back, even if the idea of that meal was exciting to me." When you spend $50 on a meal, you expect the food to be fully cooked and properly prepared, and if the chef fails to do his job, then yes, he owes you an apology regardless of whether you can get a refund. He promised something he didn't deliver. You get to call him out on that. The idea that you could promote something, get people excited about it, take their money, and then deliver a half-assed product is ridiculous. But he continues, quote, "These are literally video games. Gamers have invested virtually nothing in them aside from that $30 to $60, and they can just get that refund and move on with their lives. Please, can we stop normalizing the idea that we have wronged people by making something disappointing?" First of all, for many people, $60 is a good chunk of change. I understand that your rich ass might have money, but everybody can't just throw away $60. Second, it would be one thing if it were one game or one company, but it's not. It's a trend within the gaming industry in general. Too many developers and publishers put out incomplete games that need massive day one patches to fix problems they already knew were there. Plenty of games are released in a state where it takes multiple updates over the course of months just to get them into a playable condition. Third, and most importantly, no, you can't just get a refund. Digital sales usually have a 2-hour window for refunds. That might not be enough time to catch the glitches in many games because some of them happen later in the game. If you buy a physical copy, most stores won't give you a refund if you open the game. I'm not talking about playing the game. I mean just taking off the plastic. I've worked in retail. I've seen people get refunds rejected when just the corner of the plastic is torn. If you open the game and play it and find out it's glitched, there are no refunds for you. But listen to yourself, man. You're defending putting out a broken product. Why would you want to release something that doesn't work? Do you have no respect for your craft? Do you care that little that you're cool with your game being a mess? Apparently he is. Quote, uncomfortable truth I think we need to grapple with. This sort of apology absolutely helps perpetuate entitlement among gamers that makes them feel empowered to harass devs when they don't like the latest patch or design choice. No, it doesn't. The truth is that you shouldn't have to keep patching your game. There are some games that might require this, like Elden Ring having so many combinations of spells and weapons that inevitably something will work in a way that the devs didn't intend. Most of the time, though, the patches are just to fix bugs that were there before the release date, meaning the devs already knew about them and either they or the publisher decided to put off fixing them until after they got people's money. People get to criticize that decision, especially when they're giving you their money for a product that you promised to deliver in a certain state. But dude took offense to people pointing this out, saying, quote, what some of y'all heard apparently, gamers shouldn't leave bad reviews, consumer protections aren't necessary, and I'm part of a cabal of evil game devs who love cash-grabbing gamers with shitty products. Dude, you said that apologizing for mediocre and broken games, quote, helps perpetuate entitlement among gamers. The Gollum game is a mediocre game. There's basically nothing to do in it. The AI for the enemies is barely existent. There's no real story to tell because nothing happens to Gollum outside of fleeing Mordor and searching for the Shire. Now, I knew this would be the case, which is why I had no interest in the game. Anyone who's read The Lord of the Rings or seen the films would know. But the devs decided to make the game anyway. They knew what they had. They obviously playtested the game. Every dev does this. So to sit here and pretend that no one involved knew it was a boring mess doesn't fly. They knew exactly what they had a long time ago and should have shelved the game instead of releasing something this forgettable. That covers the Gollum game, but that says nothing about games like Redfall, Jedi Survivor, The Last of Us, or Cyberpunk. Those games launched in a damn near unplayable state, all of them across multiple platforms. Why shouldn't people be allowed to call that out? He gives this pissy response, quote, look, leave your negative review, boycott the company, fight for better refund policies. Hell, join a class action lawsuit if you can't get your money back for a broken product. There should be repercussions for bad customer practices, and people should absolutely get refunds. But the idea that a company has wronged you if they make a thing that doesn't live up to your expectations or that they somehow work for you, sorry, those are ideas that frankly need to die. It's not about our expectations. It's about your promises. If you say the game can do this thing and then it can't, it's not me having a high expectation. It's you failing to do what you said you would do. And yeah, if you're sitting here leading people on that the game is going to be something that it's not, you have wronged the customer. You lied to them. Intentionally or not, you made promises you couldn't keep. It might be something big, like claiming you'll have these intricate interactions throughout the game, like Fable, or something as simple as the game will be fun to play. Either way, you delivered less than you promised, and that's a problem. Now with the Gollum game, I agree that no one should have released a statement apologizing for the boring experience. They made a boring game. The best thing to do would be to learn from that experience and make a better game, not grovel like it's the worst thing in the world because, honestly, they didn't promise that much to begin with, and I don't think any reasonable gamer thought this was going to be a Shadow of Mordor killer. It was pretty obvious the game was going to suck. This is like with the Rings of Power. If you bought this game, you knew what you were getting. It's probably worse than you expected, but you already knew it was going to be bad going in. Eventually, Snarky gets tired of the clapbacks at his attitude that the game developers did nothing wrong, and wraps up with this, quote, I don't think anyone should sit back and act like it's okay if a company puts out a broken game. Despite what literally hundreds of you are reading into this, all I was getting at was companies ought to stop acting like gamers are their employers or investors. They are not. Well, we're not your employers, but we are giving you money, some of which you use to develop new games, so yeah, we're kind of indirect investors. I don't think you need to be beholden to gamers to the point that we're dictating what games you can or can't make, but you should care whether we enjoy the game, if only to understand what worked and what didn't. Your attitude can't be, just shut up and play the game, because no one has to play your game. Honestly, I don't know why people think like this. Every single time there's some criticism about this stuff, From games to books to music, even to politics, there's always someone who pops up and goes, just shut up and do as you're told. No, I won't shut up and do as I'm told. Just like you're not beholden to me, I'm not beholden to you. I don't owe you anything. You're not entitled to my time or my money. I'm giving them to you freely. If you don't want them, I will give them to someone else or keep them for myself. I agree nobody should harass developers and publishers, but just remember, you're putting out a product, and if it doesn't work as intended, people get to call you out for it. Maybe make sure the games are in a playable condition before you release them, and maybe you won't have this problem. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.